You are listening to Perplexity.
Life is filled with risks and unknowns. This is no different when using a Ouija board. You could contact a loved one and have a life-altering experience. Gain closure that you've wanted forever. You could have absolutely nothing at all occur. And according to some, if you're not careful, you could open a spiritual realm, inviting malevolent entities that you may have never intended to contact in the first place. You could get an attachment. You could be oppressed. You could also be manipulated, as you have no way to actually know if who you're talking to is who they claim to be. Nevertheless, the Ouija board continues to be one of the most iconic items in a variety of spiritual practices and paranormal investigations. Countless stories persist of strange and unexplained phenomena when using one. So now the question is, do you believe it or not? Today, we will be exploring the history of Ouija boards and the infamous urban legend of Zozo the Ouija Board Demon. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Perplexity, a mystery podcast. As always, I am your host, Kadra. If you're new to the show, hello and welcome. I tell tales every single week that have perplexed me. So if you love a good mystery that leaves you wanting more, don't worry, you're in the right place. And if you end up enjoying today's episode, I would love it so much if you continue to follow along. If you're a returning listener, hello, my friends. Happy spooky month. I'm so happy you're here, and I have a great episode for you guys today. I'm also super excited because I am not alone. Today, I am joined by the awesome Adam from Weekly Creep and now the Houston Strange podcast.
Hey everybody, I'm so glad to be here, honestly. And I'm so impressed with you reading that entire thing without needing to take a break.
Thank you so much. I always practice my intros before I record with guests because I used to not, and I would get nervous and mess up and have to read it multiple times. So now I always practice my intros.
Yeah. No, you nailed it. You nailed it.
Yeah, thank you. And welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you. And I'm so stoked for you guys to get a new podcast to listen to. You guys have to check out Houston Strange. Adam sent me his first episode. I got like a sneak peek and it is so good. I was very impressed. It's funny because at the beginning you were like, sorry if the audio quality's poor, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm expecting to like hear something terrible. And it's like this cool, eerie, rainy, and like you guys sound super clear and I love it. So I'm very, very excited for your show to come out.
I'm really glad. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm going to play the trailer for Houston Strange so that you guys can get a taste of it. And we're going to talk a lot more about Adam's show and some paranormal experiences at the end of today's episode. So be sure to stay tuned for that.
And so they're playing with the Ouija board. I'm getting a little shaky. I haven't told this story in a long time.
We do think there's something in that room.
My blood ran cold.
First I put it underneath the door, and then I opened the door because you know, like you can hear somebody walking right here on the floor, and there was nothing.
She's like, if you get physical proof that this stuff is happening, I can't live here, and we can't afford to move.
It's something dark.
Welcome to Houston Strange. My name is Adam, and I will be your host. Since moving to Houston from Ireland a few years ago, I've stumbled upon countless fascinating stories, little nuggets of local folklore and tales of high strangeness that most Houstonians seem to know nothing about. With Houston Strange, my mission is to dig deeper into these hidden stories and uncover new stories from the people that make this city truly unique. Join me on October 17th for episode 1, wherever you find your podcasts.
If you believe in this kind of stuff.
And Adam's links for his show will be down in the show notes as well. So definitely go check it out and let him know that Perplexity sent you. Please and thank you.
Yeah, definitely let me know where you came from because I always love finding out. And then I can message Kadra and be like, I got another one. Thank you.
Another one.
Yeah.
Yes. Houston Strange comes out October 16th, right, Adam?
16th or 17th, whatever 2 weeks before Halloween is.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So definitely go check that out. And a couple quick announcements, and then we will get into today's story. I just want to remind everybody that tons of stuff is coming out, especially this month on patreon.com/perplexity mystery podcast. Right now, I am doing my Cursed Games series, and that's going to be right on theme with this episode too. I know I just did a Cursed Video Games episode, so I don't know what is in the water right now, but I'm just really intrigued by the games. So I've talked about the Midnight game. The Three Kings ritual game will also be out on Patreon by the time this comes out. And then I also started a new documentary series. We are covering At Wit's End, which is a true crime coverage about a tragic serial killer case, missing persons. It's very similar to the Texas killing fields. So my true crime listeners, if you enjoyed those episodes, definitely go check that out. And don't forget, I'm gathering listener stories all the time, but especially right now. So if you guys have stories to share, I know I've already gotten a couple, so thank you guys for that. You know who you are. Send your listener stories. I would love to read them on the show. It can be anything. Spooky, mysterious, unexplained, perplexity mystery podcast at gmail.com is how you do that. And last reminder, virtual live show is coming up. I'm doing my Halloween show, save the date, Wednesday, October 30th, 8 p.m. Central. It'll be on YouTube Live. And I'm super excited. I'm going to read you guys a full story, which I did not do last live show. I just did a bunch of listener stories. But you are going to get a full story this time because we are ringing in 100 episodes. So you'll get your usual episode on the podcast on Wednesday, but then that night I will give you guys a whole other story. So definitely go check that out. Be sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel if you have not subscribed yet, because that's where it will be. And trigger warning, as always, for today's episode, this podcast is not for children. Listener discretion is advised. And all of the sources that were used for today's episode will be down in the show notes. So, without further ado, Adam, you ready?
I am so ready for this, yes.
Let's get into this story all about the history of Ouija boards and Zozo. The first time I ever heard the story of Zozo, I was absolutely terrified. I was listening to it on another podcast and I was doing yard work outside and it scared the bejesus out of me. So, Adam, are you familiar with the story of Zozo?
I am. I haven't done a ton of reading about it, but I've heard other people discussing it, and I know the bare bones of the story, but I'm sure I'm gonna learn some new facts today that are gonna rock my socks.
It's fascinating. I mean, even if it's just an urban legend, I love urban legends, and I always feel like there's at least some truth to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We're going to start off just getting into the history of Ouija boards, and then we'll get into Zozo. So, in case anyone is not familiar, I feel like most of my listeners know what a Ouija board is, but just in case, it is a flat board like a game board. It has the alphabet, the numbers 0 through 9, yes, no, and goodbye. And to use the board, you have to put your hands on what is called a planchette. So it's a little wooden object shaped like a teardrop with a little window inside so that you can see where you're moving the planchette onto various letters, numbers. And the idea is that you're lightly placing your hands there and the spirits that you are talking to or entities, what have you, are guiding your hands across with the planchette to get various responses. 2 or more people are supposed to sit around the board and ask questions. You are not supposed to use a Ouija board alone, though a lot of people do. And the idea is to let the spirits guide you to your answer, but many skeptics say that this all sounds, of course, ridiculous and fake, but to others, including many psychologists, the Ouija board could offer a link between the known and the unknown, including the paranormal. And there have actually been some studies on Ouija boards that we'll talk briefly about. So the Ouija board came about thanks to spiritualism in the 19th century. It was America's big obsession at the time, and spiritualism has been around much longer in Europe, but it hit America really hard in about the mid-1800s. And fun fact, Mary Todd Lincoln, President Lincoln's wife, was known to perform seances in the White House after her 11-year-old son died in 1862.
Yeah, I so the whole spiritualism thing, I've literally just yesterday I was getting like way too deep in the weeds trying to find, but the whole the trendiness of the seance is what like blew me away, to be honest. And I can only imagine what it was like in the White House having all this stuff going on. But my fun fact for spiritualism, because I do actually love that whole movement. I love like reading the old SPR, the Society for Psychical Research journals and stuff like that.
Yes.
But yesterday I found out. Have you ever heard the word mesmerize? Right, of course you have.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So that actually came from a dude, Frank Mesmer, or Franz Mesmer. I'm probably butchering it now. I was like, I got to work. I was like, hey, you're never gonna guess what. Yeah, and that came out from him. Like he was the one who did like animal magnetism and started hypnotizing people. But at the time, it was mesmerizing, and then that's where the word came from. But it all like led into this spiritual movement, which was just so trendy. So
wow. I did not know that, and
There's
I love
your
a good
random
fun
fact,
fact.
yeah.
Yes, thank you, Adam, bringing the fun facts. That is fantastic. And another thing that's really mysterious about the Ouija board, and also can be a bit confusing, is like where it came from and who invented it. There's some controversy around that. There's basically like a lot of, and it seems to by and large be white men, a lot of white men that were like, I invented the Ouija board. No, I did. And they're like arguing over patents and stuff. So when I would like go through these various sources, it would be like, it was likely this person. And then I'd hear a totally different name. So all of that to say, if you are familiar with history of Ouija boards, and you hear some names and you're like, that's not right, it's because there's a lot of different beliefs about who created it. So this is like the general consensus from what I gathered. It seems the first variation of the Ouija board came about around the 1880s. The Associated Press wrote about these spiritualist camps in Ohio that were using what they called a talking board. They had letters, numbers, and some type of planchette-like device that they were using to talk to spirits. And it's believed that the name for the device, Ouija board, came about when the creators called out to whoever the spirit was they were talking to, and they asked the spirit for advice. They were like, we have this cool device, what should we call it? And they say that the spirit said Ouija. And then they asked the spirit, what does that mean? And the spirit said it means good luck. So, interesting.
All right, I accept. Yeah.
I briefly looked at this too. There was like some misconception that a lot of people think that it comes from the word oui in French and ja in German, meaning like yes and yes, I think is what that was. But apparently that's not what the name actually comes from. That's like a myth.
Yeah, because that was the first like version of the story that I had heard like a long time ago, and then a lot of people say no, it's not a yes board, but I didn't know it was supposed to mean good luck either. So
yeah, I didn't either. So I always tell my listeners, like, I don't know this stuff, I just learned it this week, so it's always really interesting. Like, I'm learning with you guys.
yeah, we learn along together.
Exactly. So it's possible that the Ouija board was invented by a variety of people. So we'll briefly talk about these. Elijah J. Bond is said to have built a patent in 1891, but the origins, are controversial. The board became very popular by the time it was 1920. The Ouija Novelty Company would write to the Baltimore Evening Sun claiming that they were the original inventors of the board. But it seems that none of them were, because we can trace these patents back to much earlier from different people. Other people say the board was invented by someone named E.C. Reich, who died in 1899. So they couldn't exactly defend themselves when all of these people in the 1900s were saying they made it. But if it was Reich, it seems like William Fuld was the one who took this patent and it became his legacy. So a lot of people associate the board with William Fuld.
It is funny though how a lot of these things back in the day literally came down to who got to the patent office first.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that with Is it Edison or Franklin? It might be both of them. I think I'm thinking of Benjamin Franklin. A lot of people
Blaming
say he
other
was like a,
people's.
yeah, I think I'm remembering that right, that he was like a fraud and he took a lot of people's inventions,
Probably, and
allegedly.
I'm sure a lot of it was like who you know down at the patent office as well.
Right,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
So Fold is the one who popularized the Ouija board, but I thought this was really interesting. So he was not a spiritualist, he was actually Presbyterian.
Okay.
And he would advertise it very carefully. Like he would purposefully word it as like not like he never mentioned it's for spirits or for contacting the dead. It would just be about like asking it questions and getting answers about past, present, and future. So I don't know if he was trying to indicate that this is like a way to talk to God. I have no idea, but he would purposefully leave out spirits, contacting dead. Like,
Yeah, I feel like he would have lost a huge amount of his like target audience by
right?
not saying like you can talk to your dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's very fascinating. And I mean, you could also argue that like the Ouija board or variations of it could go back way, way, way further. I mean, like we've been channeling spirits for since ancient times, and
Right, right.
seances have been going on a long time. So, I'm sure people used various objects for centuries and centuries to do it. So it's a very similar concept. It's just giving us a little bit more of a clear answer with like the letters and stuff. So in 1971, this is another reason that the Ouija board became very popular, but more for negative reasons. So William Peter Blatty wrote a novel called The Exorcist. And it was based on a real case from 1949 of a child allegedly being possessed by a demon when he was using a Ouija board with his spiritualist aunt. And this book became incredibly popular, 13 million copies sold. And then just 2 years later in 1973, The Exorcist would hit the big screen, scaring the shit out of people.
Yeah, and like rightfully so, I think, based off of like there was no podcast back then. You know what I mean? Like this was the closest thing. Like it was almost a documentary for a lot of people when they watched this. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people use this as like, see, this is why we don't mess with, But I think what's fascinating about just like the impact that The Exorcist has had, I don't think I've ever had a conversation in and around like paranormal without the exorcism or the exorcist popping up. Like just even to say like, well, until 1973, all over the world. I think it was banned in Ireland. Like,
Really?
yeah, for like a long time. And then, I mean, that's a big, well, it was a big Catholic country at the time. And like my mom, she wouldn't allow it to be played in the house. Like if it was on TV, me and my dad would be watching it in the living room with the volume down low.
Oh,
Because
that's funny.
yeah, because she wouldn't be able to sleep otherwise. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always said like when I was a kid and I would watch scary movies that those were the ones that scared me the most, whereas anything involving like demonic possession, it's just such a scary thought. And I grew up in a Christian, very spiritual household. So I grew up like fully believing that. And there's definitely a big part of me that still like sees those things as plausible and finds some of these stories to be quite believable. So it is scary. I actually just watched the original The Omen from the 1970s, and
Brilliant.
it's really good. And I wanted to watch the first Omen that just came out this last year, but it's supposed to be like a prequel about it. And so I
Okay.
wanted to watch the original first. And I'm glad I did because it has a lot of Easter eggs from the original. Good watch if you guys want to watch the OG, the Omen, and then the first Omen is pretty good as well. It's not actually the original, but it's from 2023 and it's supposed to be a prequel.
Those
Yeah.
70s movies though hold up like fantastically, I find.
They
Yeah.
do. Yeah. I had never seen The Shining until like a few years ago, and that's a really, really good movie as well. I know.
Oh my God. That's
So
my like
good.
comfort movie. Anytime it's like downloaded on my iPad at all times. Like as soon as I get
Yeah?
on a plane, Shining is on, I fall asleep. Yeah.
Yeah, I had never watched it until a couple years ago, and I finally was just like, I need to go through and like watch all these OG movies, and yeah, it's fantastic. So like I said, The Exorcist really popularized this, and then the Satanic Panic also was going through this time. So a lot of people started to fear these boards, but it didn't stop them from hitting the shelves. So in Pittsburgh in February of 1981, the first Ouija board that came out as being advertised as a toy, it seems like this is when it came out. It was advertised as a wonderful talking board that answered questions about the past, present, and future with marvelous accuracy.
Wow.
Yeah. And again, you kind of notice the wording. It doesn't mention spirits, but it's almost like a fortune teller, essentially.
Yeah, and it's cool that there's like an undertone of like people never didn't know that it was a spirit board, or you know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
just a constant understanding of like, hey, you know, these things can that's really cool, actually. I didn't know that.
Right. And the idea of going to like a children's toy and novelty shop and buying a Ouija board, and this was $1.50 as well.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
What a bargain.
So, according to scientists and skeptics, these boards function off of what is called the idiometer effect. And my understanding of this is that it's this phenomenon it's caused by these automatic, like these tiny muscular movements that can take place in our body without us consciously knowing. So like our body's subtly moving things, maybe because subconsciously we want it to happen, but consciously we don't realize it. And this does make sense to me because our brains have reflexes, these things we do automatically without realizing, kind of like how our brain sends signals to our bladder and we go to the bathroom. And then we have volitional control, so things that we do on our own volition, like when we're learning a dance, for example. You know, it could be one of those things where we're not realizing that we're making these movements. Similar theories have been presented when talking about dowsing rods and pendulums, so other very common tools used by spiritualists and paranormal investigators. So these research studies are continuing to come out. They're looking at Ouija boards, psychologists and scientists, but getting a lot of research is difficult because it's still a taboo topic. So,
Yeah.
But that's one of the big theories in the scientific community is that it's the idiometer effect.
I actually had a really interesting discussion about this. I was fortunate enough to visit a Victorian mansion recently that's supposed to be
cool.
like slightly haunted, but like not like it's just got it's old basically. So weird stuff does happen there. But the guy who owns it used to do seances and because he believes in both ends of it. So he believes that you can guide it, but also like at what point is that opening you up for these messages to come in? And it we
Yes.
spoke honestly for hours about it, and like he had really good stories from both camps, like, you know what I mean? And I mean, I'll never profess to be an expert on anything, but these things like genuinely blow me away.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like I'm that same way about a lot of things in the paranormal, is that I'm kind of in the middle, and there's definitely very believable stories that I've heard about Ouija boards and experiences where it's just like at the end of the day, I feel like our brains are very powerful and we don't know what we are opening ourselves up to. So it's just something that, you know, I think it's good to proceed with caution and be aware of. I personally have never touched a Ouija board. Have you ever used one, Adam?
No, but we do have an interesting Ouija board related story that's like very timely, actually.
Oh, okay.
I will tell it when you're done with your
Perfect.
with the story. Yeah.
Some people think these Ouija encounters could all be chalked up to the idiometer effect, some type of subconscious psychological phenomena, and that is possible. But you can't deny that there are tons of Ouija board encounter stories. They're continuing to come out, and they're not always so easy to debunk. I came across so many online. There's tons on Reddit if you guys just want to go into a rabbit hole. But we are going to talk about the highly controversial and terrifying urban legend of Zozo. This is probably one of, if not the most famous stories with a demonic entity being attached to a Ouija board. It's also gone on to be verified by hundreds, if not thousands, of others online. having allegedly similar experiences. But the original story goes back to a man named Darren Evans, who is actually a paranormal investigator. I did not know that when I first heard the story. The story first became public knowledge on March 24th, 2009, when Darren shared his first story in an online forum for true ghost stories.
God, it's so recent as well. I didn't realize just how recent it was, actually. I don't think I remembered that.
Yeah, it's really not from that long ago, like when it became public knowledge, but he says his first encounter was in 1982.
Okay.
In 1982, he was basically in his girlfriend's house, and for whatever reason, he was exploring around the crawl space. I don't know if it was a new home or what, but he claims that's where he found this old Ouija board. And then he noticed, I know this is like the beginning of a horror movie, he noticed on either side of the board were glass jars with preserved remains of black birds with bloody eyes. On the back of the board were strange carved inscriptions and drawings of silver leaves. Where Ouija was written on the board originally, it had been crossed out and it said Zozo.
Okay.
Spooky.
Yeah, that, like, regardless of your beliefs, if you find that in your crawl space, like,
Don't touch it.
Yes, all of a sudden you're going to be very, like, in tune with these things. You're like, I need a priest.
It's hard too because it's like, I don't want to touch it because I don't want to like open myself up to anything, but I also don't want to leave it sitting here and also like let it be doing whatever it's doing in the house. Like, how do you get it out of there? You know?
That's actually a really good point. Like, what do you do?
I will say I definitely would not go on to interact with it though, which is what Darren did.
Oh God.
Okay, so Darren would ask his girlfriend, and I believe his girlfriend's mom, who either lived there or like it was her house, I don't know, but he talked to both of them and was like, do y'all know why this board is here? And both of them were like, no, we have no idea. But he decided to use it.
I could just imagine this guy being like, hey, I'm just going to go down to crawl space real quick. And then, hey, are these your dead birds?
Yeah, right? Whose birds are these? Exactly.
Can I have these?
I guess he was really curious, or maybe like if you want to kind of think of it in a creepy way, maybe the board was calling him in some way. Because he decided to use it. He starts messing with it, and this is when he gets contact with an entity who claimed to be named Zozo, Z-O-Z-O. The board went wild, with the planchette flying back and forth between the letters Z-O frantically over and over, spelling Z-O, 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 and so on. The entity claimed that it had come to take the Evans family, so their family, to paradise.
Interesting.
When Darren asked what this meant, the planchette then spelled out H-E-L-L. Darren then felt that something was very wrong, so he rushed to the bathroom, where his girlfriend had been giving their 1-year-old daughter a bath. But when he opened the door, he found his girlfriend was gone and their 1-year-old daughter was in the tub alone, drowning.
Gee, okay, that got dark like really quick.
Yes.
Well, I also do like that point that you made. Like, was this thing? This was something else I was looking into the other day. Like this, like weird pull that you hear like so many times from like paranormal stories. Like, how many times have you heard someone say, "I don't know, I was just on my phone, then all of a sudden, like I looked over here, and then I saw like this or that."
And we don't know why he went to the crawl space. Like maybe it kind of called him to go there, you know? So really spooky. So his 1-year-old, I guess, stepdaughter, basically, he finds her in the bathtub, saves her just in time. And then one day later, she came down with a mysterious infection. So the daughter, you know, gets rescued from the tub. She seems fine, but then a day later, she gets mysteriously ill. So they ended up having to take this girl to the hospital, and she was hospitalized for 2 weeks. Darren felt that Zozo was responsible. He feels that he was responsible because of some interactions he had with him using the board. So I don't know the full timeline of things. It's a little confusing, but it sounds like he was continuing to use this board and ask Zozo questions while all of this is going on.
Right.
Darren had a band. It was like this heavy metal band, and he was looking for a name for it. So he, I guess, is kind of joking around. Is like, Zozo, what should I name my band? And Zozo said, Iron Tongue. And one of the mysterious symptoms that their 1-year-old daughter had was this incredibly swollen, heavy tongue that she couldn't keep inside of her mouth.
Jeez, that is terrifying
Yeah.
in itself. Like, wow.
Right. And doctors would run all these tests. She was there for 2 weeks, but they could never figure out what caused the illness. But luckily, she recovered and survived. Odd things would continue to happen, but Darren continued to use the board anyway. He used the board for years.
I mean, at first you can like kind of understand, like maybe he's not drawing like the connection or like seeing the correlation or something, but like after a while you have to kind of go, oh no, something is wrong with this. But
Yeah.
it is interesting that you say for years. I have heard of that like relationship developing with the board itself. It's like a weird kind of dependency or
Attachment.
something. Or
Yeah,
attachment, yeah.
exactly. It is to that. Yeah, to me, that would be like an attachment to a spirit, you know? So
Right,
it seems he got an attachment to Zozo because he would use this board for years. He took it with him to multiple homes. He moved like across states, and he would always take this board with him. And he also dated, various partners over the years. And
Oh, okay.
he like, I know he had one girlfriend that was kind of a skeptic, and he like pulled the board out and was like, watch this, and having her interact with it. He also wrote like a whole book about all of his experiences, which I know I mentioned at some point in this story. There's a lot to this story. I'm kind of giving you guys a big overview of everything. But no matter who he was with or where he was, according to Darren, when he would interact with a Ouija board, every single time Zozo would come through. Darren went on to have health problems himself as well. He was saying that he started having these intense hallucinations. He had to see a clergyman twice for deliverance, and people who would visit his home also claimed that they were experiencing paranormal activity. They were hearing voices. There was movement coming from what sounded like from inside the walls.
Yikes.
Yeah. Spiders seemed to manifest out of nowhere, which is like my worst nightmare.
Yeah, me too. Like, oh my God.
Darren claims after sharing his story with the internet, so that was in, I think, 2009, then he started doing some Googling on Zozo. And he found more than a dozen blog posts describing this same phenomena, including the name Zozo. Darren's story had gone on to inspire the 2012 film I Am Zozo, which I have not seen.
Yeah, me neither.
And it's also appeared on Ghost Adventures in 2014. He and his ex-wife, along with a handyman who experienced the activity, were interviewed.
That's so funny. That like, as somebody who has literally been a handyman for I think I was maintenance supervisor or some made up name like that. That's like, yeah, and here's John. Like he fixes our oven.
Right? Yeah, I haven't seen the episode, but I was like reading an article that kind of explains what happened. So during the episode, Darren Evans was asked, I'm imagining by Zach Bagans, to use a Ouija board for the first time in, he says, a decade. So I guess he got scared and had stopped touching them.
I'm sorry, was it his actual Ouija board, or is it just some random Ouija board that Zach had produced?
I don't know. The article said he was asked to use a Ouija board for the first time in a decade, but I don't know what board it was. But he had another supposed Zozo encounter on the show. And then later on, he worked with an author named Rosemary Ellen Gilley to write his Guiley. You know who that is?
Yeah.
Okay. She helped him write his book.
Wow. Okay.
It's called The Zozo Phenomenon. It came out in 2016. And I think Guiley is also like a paranormal investigator or writer.
Yeah, she's like one of those big names in like Jim Harold was like a big fan of hers. So I personally haven't read any of her books. I think she's one of these paranormal authors who like really goes off the deep end as much as you can follow along as much as you like, but some of her stuff is kind of more out there, you
Got
know.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I know who Jim Harold is. He's the one who does the campfire tales, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yes.
He's such a lovely guy.
That is essentially like Darren's story, but hundreds of people have gone on to describe similar experiences to Darren, though it should be noted most of these stories seem to have all been released after Darren's was released online. You know what I
Right.
mean? So, kind of like maybe adding to the urban legend. Many times they say that when they have these experiences, it's because they were sitting down with a Ouija board trying to contact a loved one. And it seems at first like they're talking to their mom or whoever they're trying to connect with. But then it twists and the language changes. And Zozo basically tricks them. And then the letters will, like the planchette will fly between Zo, Zo, Zo. And it's like, oh, I'm not talking to who I thought I was talking to. The board will also sometimes spell out other names that some people say is attached to Zozo, like he's a demon with many names. So sometimes it spells Zoso, Zaza, Mama, Zo, Oz. And then some people also say he's attached to the name Abacus.
Interesting. The Zaza sounds like a much more friendlier version, a much more flamboyant version of Zozo. But I do think it's interesting that the Zoso thing comes up because, like, I don't know, like Led Zeppelin, the band, they all used to have their little, I guess, icons. What would you call it? But I think like so they would have been around in the late 60s, 70s, and at that time, like magical belief was like now it's in a resurgence, but at that time, like those guys really had to like go through and read like the huge boring tomes to learn like any of the sigil. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for, sigil. To learn any of this like magical practice. And like David Bowie was big into it. There's a rumor that David Bowie was so paranoid that Jimmy Page, the guitarist from Led Zeppelin, had put a curse on him that he would keep like a bottle of Jimmy Page's urine and some fingernails in his fridge at all times, just in case he had to reverse the curse. But
Wow.
yeah, Jimmy Page's sigil was actually Zoso.
Oh, okay.
So that always
Interesting.
stuck out, yeah, to me.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a correlation. I can't, I haven't found it out yet.
There could be, because Zozo is said to be a very ancient entity, and I believe I bring that up in my notes. So maybe it traces back to those original origins. So basically, you know, this person's sitting down trying to connect with a loved one, then it kind of gets twisted on them, and it's like, surprise, it's me, Zozo. And the board is often said to spell out obscenities and blasphemies and then make threats to the user.
Hmm.
People have reported sudden intense feelings of anger, fear, depression, and even suicidal ideation after an experience with Zozo, as well as intense headaches, sleepwalking, illness. Most Zozo's encounters have happened with Ouija boards, but some people also say they've encountered him during pendulum dowsing, automatic writing, and hypnosis sessions.
Okay, interesting.
If you suspect that you've made contact with Zozo, it is advised that you stay calm and you close the session by moving the planchette to goodbye. To get rid of an unwanted connection to Zozo, it is also recommended that you stop using your board for a while. Put it away, cleanse your home with sage and or holy water. Unlike what Darren did.
But I think like that's solid advice in any situation, paranormal or not. Like, because it's funny you read that off like as if it was like, you know, if you get this in your eyes, you know, call your doctor. But honestly, and I don't always practice this because I have been in situations where I have absolutely lost my mind for a very brief time. But yeah, the stay calm thing is the biggest the best thing you can do in any of these situations, you know what I
Well,
mean?
because
Like,
they feed off of your energy.
exactly,
You know?
yeah.
And I mean, not all spirits are malevolent, obviously, but Zozo is said to be a malevolent entity that wants to feed and take control. So I mean, if you're theoretically like freaking out. I mean, you're giving him what he wants. The name Zozo itself has shown up for more than 200 years. The oldest Zozo story comes from the book Dictionnaire Infernal by Colin de Plancy, published in 1816. And de Plancy would write of a young girl in a small French village who claimed that she had been possessed by multiple demons named Mimi, Capulet, and Zozo.
Wow.
Yes, and the girl ended up having to be exorcised. It is said when the demons left her body, it was so intense that the windows in the room shattered. De Plancy, despite publishing the story, remained skeptical, though, and he claimed he didn't believe a word of it.
So he published the story, but he wasn't actually there. Is that what it?
Yeah, he wasn't actually there, and then he also just, I guess, chalked it up to another urban legend or something.
Okay.
But a very creepy story.
Yeah, definitely.
And remember when I said Zozo may have had ancient origins? Some people speculate that Zozo derives from the infamous Mesopotamian god Pazuzu, who was known to be the ruler of demons and a creature that has terrorized occultists and party game enthusiasts for at least 2,700 years.
Wow. Okay. Long time running.
And one of Zozo's many names is Zoso or Zaza, so maybe that's where that
Yeah.
they got that name from in the band. Perhaps Zozo is Pazuzu, and Pazuzu is the demon that allegedly possessed Roland Doe in the real life Exorcist case. So, you know, this kind of, it's all going full circle now.
Yeah.
He could also be, and I really like this theory, Zozo could also be a tulpa, or a demon of the mind. Tulpas, I've briefly talked about on the podcast before, but it's that very strong power of our minds where if we want something to happen or we believe it, we can literally make it tangible. So if a lot of people are using this board over and over and over, and they're asking to contact Zozo or they believe it, it could be created. I think I talked about tulpas when I did my Bloody Mary episode. There's a similar theory with her and why they see her in the mirrors, and tulpas is one of them. In 1972, psychologists tested whether people can communicate with the paranormal through what was called the Philip experiment, in which a fictional person named Philip was created, and a group of people were instructed to run a seance to summon his spirit. The group became convinced that they could feel Philip's presence, even going so far as to say they heard knocking sounds, they felt the table vibrating, and they even said they saw the table go up on two legs. So the researchers would conclude that the human mind can create spirits on its own will through a bit of persuasion and imagination. In a similar fashion, Zozo could be a tulpa, a materialized being or thought form created through spiritual practice and intense concentration. It could also be some other type of trickster ghost or spirit that's lying to Ouija board users and just trying to scare them.
I'm like so open to the whole tulpa thing and like the Philip experiment. To me, I'm like, this is the best thing ever, because at the end of the day, regardless of whether these people thought it into existence or the thing was already there, they still had this experience. So at what point does it become real? You know what I mean? And I feel like I don't actually have the vocabulary to get all of this whole point into words, but like, if Zozo, because I don't necessarily believe in demons and stuff like that, but I do believe in the general like thought form, energy, and all of that. So if you go in believing that this exists, are you going to manifest it yourself? You know, like I would love to do an experiment on myself where before I had learned this story, if I used the Ouija board and see what came up. And then after I learned the story to see if it would, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, I know exactly what you're trying to say, and I also have a hard time putting it into words. But regardless of if you believe in the paranormal or not, if you're more psychology based like me, The brain is a very powerful and mysterious
Yeah.
thing. So we don't know what all we're able to bring into the universe. If you believe in manifestation, if you believe in the power of meditation, of prayer, whatever that is for you, I mean, there are studies of meditation literally changing our brain. So, when we're putting things like this into the universe, we can bring in good, we can bring in bad. So,
Yeah.
caution if you guys try to contact Zozo. Also, I'm saying this at the end and you can all be mad at me, but it is said that saying Zozo is bad luck. So Adam, I apologize if I bring anything bad on you for the next couple weeks or however long. And my
That's okay.
listeners
I'll let you
be
know.
advised. But if you do an experiment like that, Adam, let me know. And that is the story of the history of the Ouija board and Zozo the Demon. Adam, any thoughts on this story before we transition into talking about your show and your encounters?
Yeah, so many thoughts. Again, well done on the research. That was really well put together. And
Thank you.
I don't know. I'm so on the fence. Like I was saying, and I'll always say I am a hypocrite because I constantly flip-flop back and forth. But I'll keep it brief. Basically, last year I was so done with all of this stuff. I was like, you know what? I genuinely I don't think this exists anymore. I think we're all freaking ourselves out, me included. And so one of our stories that we covered a long time ago was about this little boy ghost in the woods in Ireland. The story itself is probably one of my favorite ghost stories. Real or not, I love the story. Basically, this ghost boy was trying to coax another child out into the woods, and it was kind of nefarious, but like when they were actually hanging out together with this imaginary friend, like there was nothing sinister happening, but the real little boy was getting lost in the woods and would sometimes end up out there all night. I decided I was going back home for my cousin's wedding, and my only other ghost friends are in Ireland. So I was like, we don't know where this woods actually is. I'd spoken to the guy who wrote the book, and he was like, look, I'm contractually not allowed to actually tell you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but he was like, but I can give you clues, basically. And he was like, okay, so it's actually maybe in this location-ish, but like it was a very large stretch of land. My plan was, let's just go to any woods, like any forest, any whatever, and pretend like we will act like this is the woods where the little boy is. And what we'll do is over the course of a few years, we'll hit up many different areas, like in various parts of the country, and we will perform the same experiment, like just a regular old ghost hunt, except it's in the woods and we don't know if this thing actually exists.
Wow.
I don't think we're going to catch anything, but let's just see if we can find him in all of the spots or none of the spots. I started having dreams that came true, like very much like
premonitions?
like actual premonitions. And like the first one was like really boring. It was just at the place where I used to work, and I had to go to this other supervisor to ask for a specific part. And it wasn't on a list or anything. He just happened to know where it was in the back of the warehouse that I had never been. But like when I woke up from this dream, I was like, that was weird. Why did I dream of Eric? Was the guy? I was like, I was more like freaked out. I was like, why am I dreaming of Eric? That's really, really weird. And then like that week, then it actually happened. Like just like the dream. And I was like, what is this? And all around this time, I had been experiencing all these like synchronicities to the point where like I could not deny it anymore, but I just didn't know what it all meant. Anyway, I had one more really weird premonition dream, and there was like an owl in the woods and all this stuff. And it was all based off this field, and I had never been there before. There was lots of bugs, spiders everywhere. The following week, or maybe 2 weeks later, I wrote it down. I have it like written down in my little notebook. I was helping my buddy out with a photo shoot, and it was in this field where I talk about spiders. I was the only one wearing boots, so I had to go in first because we had a model in like a long white dress, And as I was stepping through the long grass, there was literally like insects, grasshoppers, huge spiders, like those wolf spiders, like the
Oh, hell
giants.
no.
Yeah, literally, it felt like walking through water, right?
Wow.
I did,
Ugh.
and I was so preoccupied by the very real danger of getting bit by something that it was only afterwards I realized, holy shit, that was the dream that I had. Like this was the exact
Sure.
location. This was the tree line, and I had taken a picture of the trees,
Wow.
but because I was actually looking at my friend, like I was there as basically his B-roll guy for the day. So anyway, I realized this all, and I get home and I'm like, what is happening? And it was about 2 weeks out from going home to do our little camping trip that I was so like nonchalantly like, oh, whatever, we'll just have fun camping with our friends. And then my wife, I was literally sitting here and my wife kind of helped me join the dots, and she was like, maybe something is telling you not to pursue this or whatever. And I had never drawn the connection, but months prior, I had had a dream about these kids in a house having fun, basically summoning this, doing one of those like online rituals.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They did it as a joke, but it actually came true. And that's where the dream had ended. But it was the only other dream where I had woken up and gone, I need to write this down. That was a really cool story.
Wow.
Either way, whether it was real or not, when my wife helped me join the dots, I like whatever it was, as soon as she said it, my blood ran cold. I was covered in goosebumps. I was just like, it was summertime in Texas, like, you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
so it was something very, very real to me in that moment, as insane as it sounds, because every time I tell this story, it sounds crazier. That night, after she told me, I was like, all right, well, I need to go and shower anyway. I was just home from work or something, but I also need to like the shower for me is like my grounding place. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
just let the water run over it. Like even like, if I've had a fight with someone or whatever, chill out for a minute. I was so on edge that while I was in the shower, I was literally looking behind the curtain because I was convinced that that little boy was there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay. So, and then all that night afterwards, my wife was like, come on, let's just meditate. You need to relax. I sounded as insane as I do now. Every single time I would like, because we were doing like some guided meditation, and it was like, follow your thoughts to the waterfall, whatever it was. Every single time I would see this shadow of this little boy
Wow.
in every location that I was trying to envision. So anyway, all that to say, I still don't necessarily think it was real, but something was telling me not to do it, whether it was my own
Hmm.
subconscious. I don't know. I just don't know. So if I now went to do a Ouija board, I'm convinced that I would manifest some connection with Zozo. Just
Right. Or the little
like,
boy.
or yeah, and then I'd be gone. Honestly, I'm like, game over. I'm never doing a podcast again. Uh, yeah, no. So sorry. I know that's really long-winded, but
No, please. That's
so that
wow, yeah. I mean, I think that so I find premonitions so interesting. I did a whole episode
yeah,
on them. And a lot of them come to us in dreams. So those are very compelling. And I feel like the mundane things we dream about that seem like normal everyday life and then it actually happening, that's so trippy to me. And we could get into, like the Matrix and all of that with that concept too. But
yeah.
I mean, that's really, really cool. I started dream journaling a couple of months ago because I had really
Okay,
poor dream recall. Like I could not remember anything that I dreamed, and I would maybe remember like a couple dreams a year. And
right.
now I dream, we dream every single night. Everybody does, but we don't always remember it. And now I remember at least several dreams a week, sometimes one every night. And it's interesting, just like the things that can come to us in our dreams and just kind of those things that our subconscious is sorting out and trying to tell our conscious mind or maybe warn us about or I
Yeah.
find that really fascinating. So, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I find that to be very compelling, especially the premonition dreams you had. That's wild.
So yeah, honestly, and like if somebody else told me that story, I might kind of go, really? But right like after that night, when I say a bubble burst and nothing happened, like no more synchronicities. Maybe I wasn't looking for them. I don't know. But like the ones that I was having were so like in your face that you couldn't deny it. And it was actually like, this is obviously an extreme thing, but like it almost felt like a mourning. It was like I'm I'm mourning the loss of this weird activity, because as
Mm.
soon as it stopped, it's like since then I don't think I've experienced anything, except when we went to Colorado. We went to the hotel that The Shining is based off, the Stanley Hotel. We were doing a ghost tour, and so we go downstairs into the there's like a servant's walkway kind of thing, and it's like built in the bedrock of the mountain. So it's cool. Like for that reason, the tour was very cool. But as we go down, there's like this big boulder, and in my head, I see this little girl peeking out and then like crouching back down. And I'm like, okay, I'm obviously like freaking myself out here because it's a dark, weird hallway kind of thing. And then the guy's like telling all these stories, and he starts showing pictures of that past tour goers have taken. And he showed me a picture of the little girl that I had seen. And like,
No.
when I know the only difference was like when I saw her, like she was animated and she was like, oh, here they come. And her hair was much like wilder than in the picture that was supposedly taken. But like that has never happened to me before.
Mm.
And like none of the, like I've had like weird things happen around the house, stuff like that, but not like on that weird, like, am I actually going insane? But then it really made me think about that night when I was freaking out, having a panic attack in the shower, and I kept checking behind the curtain because I thought this little boy was there. So I'm like,
Yeah,
did
yeah.
I
Oh,
put that
wow.
there? You know what I mean? Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. So
That's
yeah,
spooky.
I know it is so, and it's such a profound story as well. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, um,
I love that.
yeah, sorry, we got way off track. But
No,
anyway,
it's
so
okay.
it's all down to the manifestation and your own kind of fears, though. And then every now and then the universe or whatever it is you call it kind of throws a little dust back your way and makes you kind of stop and go, oh, like wait a minute. You know what I mean?
What's
What have we
happening
got
here?
here? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. I would love for you to tell the listeners about your show, what inspired you to start Houston Strange. Tell us your story.
Before we started, we were having, me and Kadra were having a little chat just before we started recording, and I was saying like I've lived in Houston for 4 years now. Like I'm from Ireland originally, and I had lived in Toronto. I lived like briefly in like Amsterdam and stuff like that as well, just based on like with a contract job and stuff. Being from Ireland, like I'm from the city, like well the suburbs, but I'm from Dublin, so it's not like we're like mad rural or anything like that. But it's still small enough, and this is something that I didn't appreciate at the time. But like if I go to the shops, if I go to the store to get groceries or something, every aisle you go down, you kind of go, oh, there's such as, hey, like what's going on? And sometimes that can be like a real pain. But when I went to Toronto, it was a huge city, like big sprawl, huge skyscrapers and all. You didn't know anybody and nobody cared, but everybody would say, like, not everybody, but like you could be on the subway and you just like give like a nod, like, hey, how's it going?
Sure.
Whatever. Or you'd be in the elevator in your building and you'd just like, how's your day going? Like that kind of back and forth. Amsterdam as well was like ridiculously friendly, but I came here and it's so separate. And it's like the only person you might talk to that day is the podcast that you have playing in your car, because there's just such a small amount of interaction. So at the start of the year, some stuff happened and we thought we might be moving back home or potentially moving elsewhere. And I was like, you know what, I've been here 4 years. I need to put the effort in now. And I think I said earlier, like, it sounds a bit romantic, but I need to like try and get to know Houston a bit better. And maybe it will give back. And so far, like it has, honestly. So I had the first episode of Houston Strange that I sent you, that popped up from an old Houston, I guess, yeah, urban legend, the Black Hope Cemetery. It's very well known. Like it's not like a hidden secret or anything like that. But like there was an unsolved mysteries episode. The guy I interviewed actually just sent me a clip from Oprah that I need to watch, where she went out and did a little expose on it or something.
Oh,
But
wow.
basically, the legend is it was built on an old graveyard that had been at one stage a plantation that was then some land was given to the freed slaves who had been on that plantation, and then a small community grew up, and then unfortunately it was leveled by a fire. So the buildings were all lost, but the graveyard stayed. And then throughout the years, with like zoning changes and basically no paperwork, the graveyard got forgotten about. It wasn't like big fancy marble headstones, it was wooden stones or like markings on trees. So like Texas weather, that it didn't last long, you know? So eventually houses were built over it, and like the movie Poltergeist, which also came out before the Legend of Black Hope came out. So a lot of people think that Crosby, Texas is the reason why Poltergeist was made, but it's not. It
Oh,
was Poltergeist came out first, but it is the
okay.
same story. Like they moved the headstones, but they didn't move the bodies.
Uh,
Um, but I've actually like I kind of managed to. I'm not going to say I 100% debunked it, but I definitely haven't found the truth in the story. But there is bodies that have been reported in this neighborhood's back garden, in the
mm,
back gardens of these of this community. Regardless of the origins of the story, the bodies are being found from unmarked graves, and a lot of the people in the neighborhood are reporting this strange activity. So anyway, yeah, that's the first series. Like I get to talk to people who actually live there and are currently experiencing like ongoing stuff. We like that Victoria mansion, like that was true Houston Strange. I got to go out and visit it and sit down. If you think this is dragging on, talk like listening to me yap on. We went to this place for a quick interview. I was like, I'm really sorry. We'll like we'll be out of your hair in no time. 4 hours, and I stopped the cameras rolling, and then another 4 hours we sat there just chatting.
wow.
So so far, Houston Strangers is working in terms of like I'm definitely getting to know more Houstonians. I'm seeing parts of the city and surrounding areas that I never would have before. So
Mm,
on a purely selfish level, I'm getting all this benefit. But the aim of Houston Strange ultimately is to try and just build more community. If it can get people together and have like a little, I don't know, Houston Strange get together, whatever, that would be my ideal end goal with it. Like I'm promoting like local charities and businesses and stuff like that.
oh, I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if anybody is listening or watching that is from Houston, reach out to
Yeah.
Adam.
Absolutely. I'm going to look in the camera, reach out to me. But yeah, so we've got like a really small Instagram account as well. So one of the things that I'm actually doing next month is I'm just going to set up a Brash Brewing Company, which is a brewery here in Houston. And I'm just going to set up a table and hopefully get some ghost stories on the spot. If they make it onto the show, like if the sound is like good enough or whatever, like that, like happy days. If not, I'll end up sharing them maybe like in written format on the website or something. But
That's
um
great.
yeah, so that could be really cool. Our Ouija board story, that is
Yes.
actually quite timely. So I'm not going to tell the whole thing because it's not my story, it's my wife's.
Mm,
I think she tells it on episode 1 of Weekly Creep, which
okay.
is probably not that great. But basically, her and her friends did a Ouija board at, I think it was like a house party, and weird stuff happened. And then when she came back, I think it was like the next day or something like that, she smelled like burning coming from our closet, to the point where like I think her mom was here as well. And the two of them thought like, okay, something is wrong. And they basically like traced it back to the closet. And then they look in there and I don't think there was anything actually there. It was just this weird burning smell. So that was kind of her like, all right, I'm never going to do this again.
Mm,
But a couple of weeks ago, we get a comment on that post from like 4 years ago. I was like, "Hey, Dulce, do you remember me? I'm your friend. I was there at the when you did the Ouija board, and so much more happened." Like it was one of those things, like you don't remember every detail or whatever. Like basically, they ended up like messaging back and forth, and it turned out like Dulce was actually the calm person while everybody else was freaking out. But like one person in particular, like had some sort of episode while they were like using the Ouija board in the house and stuff like that.
Wow.
If it was just a panic of them thinking that they had actually contacted something, I don't know. But they all are convinced that something not very nice happened that night. Like, yeah. But I
Wow.
just thought it was funny when you suggested doing the Ouija board. So I think it was probably like that same week that that person had commented on our post. I was like,
Oh,
get on to
weird.
them. I need to know the rest of this story. Like,
That's wild. I'll have to go listen to episode 1 and hear that
oh
full
God.
story.
I think maybe listen to it at like times and a half speed or something. We were very slow for some reason.
Oh, I used to not edit out like any pauses, any filler. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah, that was one of the first constructive criticisms I ever got is you're a good storyteller, but maybe edit out all the pausing. It's like, you're
Look,
right.
we're all growing together in this, okay?
Exactly. So, Adam, where can everybody find your show? How can they spread the word, support you?
Houston Strange has houstonstrange.com. It's a full website. You can go on and like fill out your submission or whatever. But even if you wanted to just use that just to reach out to me, that's also fine. I do have Instagram. It's Houston underscore strange, or just a weekly creep Instagram. I'm trying to not like spread all this. So there's like 15 different ways, but that's the primary ways to get in touch is Instagram or the website. And yeah, the show as of right now, because I uploaded like the preview and stuff, I think it's available on like Apple and Spotify, all that kind of stuff. But if it's not available on the platform that you normally listen to it on, reach out and let me know because I use Spotify and I don't really check anything else. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So yeah, if you guys don't tell me, I'm not going to be able to know. And then there will be a YouTube eventually because some of the episodes will be actual like full documentary style.
I'm so excited. I was telling Adam before we recorded, one thing that I really love in anything, an interview, a podcast, a show, is those first person encounters. That's why I love when you guys send me listener stories, because it's like, this is not really a story that you can just pull up online or hear anywhere else. And it's something really compelling about a person just sitting down and telling their story. And
Yeah.
that is what Adam is doing here. Your first episode, without giving too much away, it was like classic poltergeist story to
Yeah.
me. And the guy that had the experience is so logical and so well spoken, has really good recall of everything. And it's just it's like concise but detailed at the same time. I don't know. I just really like the way that it's worded. I really enjoyed listening to it. It's a great quality production. So I'm very excited to hear more coming out. And yeah, you guys definitely check out Houston Strange. I think y'all would really enjoy it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate coming on. Like I said, I'm actually really bad at doing this normally, but this was great fun.
I'll do a couple of announcements to like close out the episode, but Adam, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, this was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again.
As we wrap up today's episode, again, I just want to remind everybody, save the date, virtual live show, Wednesday, October 30th, 8 p.m. Central on YouTube Live. I will be doing some really cool stuff. I'll read you guys a spooky story. If we have some Halloween listener stories, we'll go through those. I'll chat to you guys, of course, just get to hang out with y'all a little bit because y'all get to hang out with me every week, but I don't really get to hang out with you. So come hang out with me. Patreon.com/Perplexity Mystery Podcast is where you can support the show, as it entirely is funded by me and by my patrons, and you get tons of bonus content, so go check that out. And if you enjoyed this episode, one of the best and easiest free ways to support is by leaving a 5-star review wherever you listen. Or if you're watching on YouTube, you can hit that subscribe button and drop a comment down below like this video. It really, really does help so much. You all are amazing. Hope you have the best week and stay safe. I hope you're enjoying my favorite month, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.